WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. My guest on the phone this morning is Dr. Marcia Young. She is the former site manager of the David Davis Mansion in Bloomington Normal, and she is going to be leading a program in Clinton on Sunday. It's the secrets of the David Davis Mansion. Perhaps many of our listeners have already heard about this program. We welcome in Marcia Young here for this morning. Marcia, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you.
Now, thank you for making time, and on somewhat short notice, we've had a lot of folks interested in being on the program, so I didn't have a lot of time to get you on, but I'm glad we were able to squeeze something in before Sunday. Now, Marcia, tell me a little bit to start us out. Tell me about the secrets of the David Davis Mansion. This program on Sunday. What is this? What's it all about?
Well, it's a history. It's a book I've written about the Davis Mansion, and it's a history commemorating 150 years of the house. And in 2022, it marked the end of the construction of a 150-year period since the mansion was built.
Mm-hmm.
And the foundation board of the mansion decided that they wanted to commemorate that history, especially in the more recent years. Nobody had ever written anything about that. And so they asked me, as the former site manager, you're sitting around, you have nothing to do, you're retired. you can crank a book out, can't you?
Yeah, right.
And I was delighted to have the opportunity. So it's a sort of biography of the house, as you will, but it has so much in it that I think people have not heard before. And as I was talking to you earlier, I called it Secrets of the David Davis Mansion because not only are these things that many people might not have heard, but they were secrets to me too as I was writing the book. So it's covering the history of the house, but it's filled with rich stories about the people who lived in that house and the things that they did that haven't really been talked about before, and they're fun stories.
Mm-hmm.
So this program that we're going to have on Sunday, however, is going to be a little bit different, slightly, from what I've said before in McLean County, because I want to talk about the relationship between Clifton Moore of the Homestead,
Mm-hmm.
the DeWitt County Museum, and David Davis, their friendship, and even a friendship that included some wonderful things that Clifton Moore did after David Davis's death for David Davis.
Yeah.
So
now
it's going to be about this book, but it's going to be about more.
and before we get into kind of that friendship and the things you're going to talk about, and perhaps the things that you've discovered in writing this book, Marcia, from what I understand, between C.H. Moore and David Davis, of course, I believe they had a good friendship, but then there was also a good friendship between those two and Abraham Lincoln. Am I remembering that right?
Absolutely. Clifton Moore was an attorney as well as a businessman. And so their paths would have crossed because they both knew Lincoln. They both practiced during Lincoln's time, practiced with Lincoln. And however, the relationship with Lincoln blossomed because they formed this business partnership, which I didn't know very much about before and have learned about during the research and have been learning about since then, too. I wish the book could have been longer because there's a lot of wonderful stuff about Clifton Moore that I would like to have put into the book, but there wasn't enough space, So,
well, you're just going to have to write another one, Marcia.
Connection.
You're just going to have to write another one now.
Oh, yes, that's what people have said, and I keep saying, I'm old. Look at me, I'm old.
Hey,
I can still talk.
You've got plenty of time, Marcia. You can get it done. But no, in all seriousness. So let's transition our the rest of our conversation then, Marcia, and talk a little bit about your book and some of the themes in it and what some of the things that you took away. I know you did a lot of research and even learned some things. So tell me about your book a little bit.
Okay. It's something that is a little unexpected because it's not filled with just boring words. It is also filled with these incredible photographs. So it's kind of like a photographic story. There are almost 300 photos in it. Some of them are in beautiful, glorious color, and they were taken recently by professional photographers. But it's also filled with these rare archival photographs from the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library in Springfield, and most of those photos have never been published before. And they are woven into the story about the house, and they illustrate various of the secrets that I discovered that I didn't know before. So it's something that the history buff might enjoy reading, but it's also something if you're just a casual reader and you want to learn more about Illinois history and about McLean County history. It is surprising the role that the David Davis Mansion played, and that's something that kind of comes through as you read the stories in the book. So it's designed to be read for fun. It's not a scholarly treatise. It does have everything is footnoted. It has a bibliography, has an index, but it's written for somebody to enjoy it and not feel that they're having a history lesson or something like that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, what were some of the lengths you had to go through and go to put this book together? I mean, obviously you probably know just about everything there is to know about the David Davis Mansion. So, how about that?
I wish I did. But the links were interesting in this regard because I started this before COVID, and COVID shut everything down in Illinois. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of the things that it shut down were libraries and research resources. So that was part of the fascinating story. Finally, the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library, where thousands of the Davis family documents are on deposit, finally it reopened, but very limited hours and very limited use. So there could be only 4 people in the reading room where they bring you the documents to read, 4 people in this entire enormous room. And we had to go through all kinds of protocols in terms of mask wearing and gloves and so on. And that was a new experience for me. So it made it more challenging, but it also kind of made it more intriguing. I felt like I was delving into the past and in a new kind of way. I wasn't just a typical boring researcher sitting there. The doors to the library were locked. We had to have an appointment time. You had to knock, and they came and let you in. You had to have a special pass and so on. So it was a greater challenge than I had ever anticipated. But on the other hand, it made it a more fascinating experience. Also, one of the biggest discoveries I made was how much has become available since the first sort of historic structures report study biography, if you want to call it, of a house. That was written in 1987, and so much more has become available to scholars through the internet, mm-hmm. and that was extremely helpful. But it meant a lot of hours of sitting and looking through documents and then discovering something later on and saying, wait a minute, I need to go back. So I went back often to the archives to find things that I didn't even know I should be looking for the first time I was there. And I should also tell you that as a state employee for years, I felt that this book should be a gift to the mansion and to the state, something I could pay back. And so I wrote it without any kind of compensation. And I've gone on a year-long book tour, and that also has been without compensation. And then finally, all sales of the book go directly to the David Davis Mansion to support it. And I do not receive any profits from the book.
Marcia Young is our guest on the phone this morning. She's the author of The Secrets of the David Davis Mansion. She'll have a special presentation here in Clinton at the C.H. Moore Homestead DeWitt County Museum in the Carriage Barn on Sunday at 2. So join her for that here in Clinton. Now, Marcia, when you started writing the book, did you set out at all to dedicate part of the book to the relationship of David Davis and C.H. Moore? Did that come organically? Speak to how that came about.
Okay. I wish that I had millions of words that I would have been able to write, because there's so much about that relationship and I'm still finding out more about that relationship. But what I did learn, I would have liked to have put a lot of it into the book, and I wasn't able to because of the restrictions on space. But I'm going to cover that and talk about that in my presentation. So this is going to be different from other talks that I have given. And what fascinates me is I think some of the discoveries I've made about the mansion might lead to new questions that the curators and the administrators could ask about the homestead, because what was happening at the mansion, this is what's fascinating, is paralleled by what happens at the Davis mansion. What happens at the homestead, I mean, is paralleled by the Davis mansion. So
like what?
I think, well, there's a library. I don't want to go into detail because these are secrets, Seth. I'm going to ask you to come to the talk.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Totally.
But there's this library that Clifton Moore builds, and that parallels an interesting story that I've been telling in some of my talks about the libraries at the Davis Mansion. And the whole attitude toward libraries changes after the Civil War. And so I'm going to talk about that as a very significant change and very revealing about America's story, too. That's, I think, the biggest secret I uncovered, is how much what happened here in Clay County and in DeWitt County mirrors some things that were happening nationwide, and makes the story of the Davis Mansion and of the homestead far more significant than we have been saying in the past. And that was probably the biggest secret of all to me, was to understand there's a new story to tell about these homes, especially these houses built in the Midwest, and how they fit into America's big story. And so that, I hope, is going to intrigue people, because when I finish talking, I hope the audience understands that we need to have more respect for the homestead, maybe, than we have in the past, because it's a significant building, as is the Davis Mansion. So I want to make that connection that I wasn't able to explore fully in the book, because I just had a limit on the number of words that I could write. So that was the publisher's limit. That I hope will intrigue people.
Marcia, you really know how to leave us hanging on pins and needles here. Like I think you just put like half the town of Clinton on your want to come out to this thing list, because that was incredible.
Well, it's fun. I mean, I've had more fun with this, and it's a story that keeps on giving. The more research I've done in preparation for the talks, the more I've realized, this story, it gets bigger and better all the time. And so I think you said something about writing another book. Well, that may have to happen. I'm not sure.
I think you're going to have to. I think you're going to, you're one, you play it modest, Marcia, but I feel like folks like you, Joey Long at our museum here, I think of Candace Summers at the McLean County Museum and of history there, folks like you that have a passion for this stuff, like that stuff is fun for you, I feel like.
It is. It's a great deal of fun. And one of the other great things is the collaboration that exists among all these museums here in Central Illinois. I've known Joy for a very, very long time, and the wonderful work that she's been doing at the homestead is just incredible. But we've worked together on other projects in the past, and with Candace at the McLean County Museum of History too. So we all enrich each other's stories, and we all learn from each other. And it's wonderful to be involved in the museum community here in Central Illinois. And I hope that the people who live in this area will be benefiting from the research that's done and the interesting new information that comes to light.
Well, Marcia, before we go to break, highlight that program on Sunday. Perhaps on the other side of the break, we will dive more into it itself. How about the program Sunday here in Clinton? That is, again, Sunday at 2 o'clock. That is The Secrets of the David Davis Mansion with Dr. Marcia Young. She'll be here in Clinton, 2 o'clock on Sunday at the C.H. Moore Homestead in the Carriage Barn. Join her for that. We'll talk more about that event coming up in the next segment with Dr. Marcia Young, author of The Secrets of the David Davis Mansion, on the phone with us. More to come on the morning show. WHOW.
Let's check the opening numbers now at the Chicago Board of Trade on this Thursday. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio Network, corn starting lower, beans slightly lower, and wheat starting the day slightly higher. July corn, 5.98 1/2, down 5 3/4. September corn down 7 1/4, 517 and 3/4, and December new crop starting today, 522 and 3/4, down 8. July beans unchanged, 1360 and 3/4. August beans 1266, down 1 1/4, and November new crop 1172 and a half, down 6. July wheat 618, up 1 1/4. September wheat 629 and a half, up 1 3/4, and December wheat 647 and 3/4. July bean meal 404.70, that's down 50 cents, and July bean oil 50.84, up 37 cents. That's a look at the opening numbers on this Thursday morning. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio Network.
Looking for a new Silverado? This is Scott Baum from Baum Chevrolet Buick here in Clinton. Yes, we finally have new Silverado inventory. We have Silverados in 1500s, 2500s, and 3500s with several trim levels. Custom, LT, RST, LTZ, and yes, high countries. This month, get an extra down payment assistance on all Silverados. Baum Chevrolet Buick. We have inventory. BaumChevyBuick.com. Right from the start.
Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, owner of your Save-A-Lot store in downtown Clinton, here to talk to you about our great meat department. When buying meat for your family, ask yourself if it's cut fresh. Are the meat cutters in the store well trained? Our meat staff has over 100 years of combined experience. At your Clinton Save-A-Lot, we take pride in having the best meat department in the area. Plus, we'll save you as much as 40% or more on your total food bill. Experience what really fresh can be by shopping at your Clinton Save-A-Lot. Hope to see you soon.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, a good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in this segment of the program, Dr. Marcia Young. She is the author of Secrets of the David Davis Mansion. She'll be in Clinton to talk about her book on Sunday at 2 o'clock in the Carriage Barn of the DeWitt County Museum. Marcia, tell me a little bit. Let's dive into maybe a couple of things of interest that will maybe come up for discussion on Sunday. Let's dial in particularly on the relationship between C.H. Moore and David Davis. What kind of stands out to you that maybe you'll expand on Sunday?
I think what stands out to me in a lot of the research I've been doing more recently is how close Clifton Moore and David Davis were. I didn't, I had never paid much attention to birth and death dates for C.H. Moore, but he was born just 2 years after David Davis. But Davis died nearly 20 years before Clifton Moore did. So Moore spans a huge period of time that covers Davis's life here in McLean County and Moore's life in DeWitt County. But also, what I hadn't realized is what kind of influential role Clifton Moore, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this on Sunday, Clifton Moore played in Davis's life after Davis's death. So I'm going to start with Davis's death in this segment you and I are discussing, and I'm going to say that I'm going to reveal something that David Davis bequeathed to Clifton Moore in his will. And that intrigued me. So I thought about, well, let me look more into the records, the archival records about what Moore might have done with regard to Davis after Davis was gone, because, Moore lives almost 20 years longer.
Right.
And it turns out that Moore played a very influential role in the life of Davis's son, George P. Davis. And George P. Davis is a minor figure in history now, but he played a huge role in preserving the David Davis Mansion, because it could have been sold to somebody else and, be a parking lot now. Because these things happen, these big old houses get torn down. But instead, George, behind the scenes, quietly founded several museums in Illinois, and which is preserving our history. And most importantly of all, he preserved his father's papers, because this was a crucial time. But I think Moore was very helpful in George's life in helping George understand what he should be doing, and also how he should be viewing history, because Moore, as evidenced by the number of books in his library at his death, Moore was a great, passionate lover of history. He had over 6,000 books in his library. So Moore is giving very important advice to George. And I don't know how many of your listeners know this, but David Davis married a second time after the death of his well-known and beloved wife, Sarah. And Clifton Moore, C.H. Moore, was very important in helping the widow of David Davis, because it was a way of showing kindness after death to his such good friend, David Davis. He was very helpful. And I will talk a little bit about that too, to the widow. So, and some of the things that Moore did, I think, were extremely helpful to George. And George very much missed his father. He missed his father's wisdom, his guiding hand, and so on. And I think Moore kind of played a sort of avuncular role. He was very helpful, even though his friend was dead. You know, David Davis was dead. And that was fascinating to me, that this relationship, which is kind of signified in the importance of it in Davis's will, that continues on, and there is that kind of loyalty and devotion to the child of a friend. And that's a kind of reciprocity that was important in the 19th century in social relationships.
Marcia, wrap us up with this. What does the program itself look like? I mean, and you know, I guess, is it going to be something where you're standing up in a group of people just lecturing for a time?
No,
do you have a what's it look like then?
It's going to be, people call it a PowerPoint presentation, and the minute you say PowerPoint, your audience members start dozing off. You know, a bunch of words. No, it's actually illustrations, photographs, images, colorful. It is what we used to call a slide presentation, and it's just really, I think, going to be entertaining in that sense. A lot of images that the audience will not have had. They get to interact with me. I'm asking them questions. We play a few games, and I'm asking them to participate in the games. I'm even asking them, what are they going to win? So it's a very interactive kind of program. And then, of course, there'll be time for questions at the end. But I'm talking about this house, but illustrating it constantly so that you can use your imagination as I talk, but you also have a lot of things to look at to engage the mind. So it's a very interactive presentation. I hope that not too many people doze off. It's always bad, when the speaker starts to nod off. So I try to keep myself awake and the audience awake at the same time.
Sure. Marcia, I have to let you go. The program Sunday at 2. Dr. Marcia Young, our guest. Network News on the way.
The Big 1520 WHOW Clinton, 92.3 FM, W222.